A person who thinks all the time has nothing to think about except thoughts. So, he loses touch with reality and lives in a world of illusions. By thoughts, I mean specifically chatter in the skull, perpetual and compulsive repetition of words, and all so-called civilized peoples have increasingly become crazy and self-destructive because through excessive thinking they have lost touch with reality. We are so tied up in our minds that we've lost our senses. Time to wake up.
Well, all right, party people. So today's the day where we're finally going to install the PRL inlet pipe for the Civic Type R. And then we're also going to be installing the elbow downpipe blanket for my catted downpipe. So if you haven't seen my previous videos, especially the one where I talk about going full bolt-on, I chose a catted downpipe instead of a catless. I don't know if I'm going to change that in the future. I may not. Well, one of the problems with choosing a catted downpipe is you can't really wrap it in heat wrap because there's too many angles and stuff. So essentially what PTP Turbo Blankets has done has created an elbow blanket for the upper half portion. Then on the bottom half portion, we still have a heat shield. So I'm interested to test that out. But this is the part that I'm probably most excited about. So before we go out to the garage and install it, I'm going to show you how to install it and everything. We're going to drive it around, see if there's any sound differences, and see if there's any power gains. Before we do that, I kind of want to dive up close here on this tabletop right here, and I want to show you all the parts. I want to kind of explain the thought process behind it, why this part even exists, and why it may or may not be a good option for your build. Oh, by the way, we're going to be doing a little bit of a giveaway later for a turbo blanket, and if you want to know how to enter, just keep watching and I'll tell you how in a little while. All right, guys, so here we are with the PRL titanium inlet pipe for the Civic Type R. Just a heads up, guys, if you see anything in this video that you want to check out, whether it's the PRL inlet pipe, I'll put my full build list down in the description below. It'll also have links to where you can pick some of this stuff up if that's something you want to check out. And just a heads up, guys, I do get a small affiliate commission if you click the links and order anything with them. And that's how I keep this channel going. You don't have to buy what I link to. You can literally click the link and buy anything. That is how I pay for this stuff. So I really appreciate your guys' support. You know, even if I did make a couple bucks off of somebody buying something, you know, it doesn't really compromise the way that I do my reviews. If you go watch my other channel, which is called Tactical Toolbox, it's more of a gun channel, but I've had guns sent to me that cost $2 grand. And if they fail or mess up on camera, I call the companies out on it. And on those, like, companies would send them to me, you know, for no charge. So, you know, I'm not gonna let a couple bucks get in the way of, you know, being honest in my reviews. So just kind of want to give you guys a heads up on that. I kind of wanted to just go over what's in the box. Also, I kind of wanted to go over a couple of things you should know before you buy it. And I wanted to do my best at explaining why they designed it the way that they did. So right off the bat, one thing you should know is this is available in 2 flavors. You can either get it to be used with your OEM airbox, or number 2, you can get it to be used with the PRL high volume intake. And so that's the version that I got. I have heard of people being able to adapt it to other intake systems. However, I don't know what that is off the top of my head. And the only thing that's different between the version that works with the high volume airbox and the version that doesn't is this guy right here. This is your intake hose that goes from your airbox over to the inlet pipe. And if you get the one for the high volume intake, you are actually gonna see, you won't get the evap flange that sticks right here. You're simply gonna transfer the one over from the high volume intake to this one. Whereas if you get the one that works with the OEM airbox, you're gonna get a pipe similar to this, plus the evap flange. And that's basically the only differences between the two. So why did PRL even create this? And why is this a needed product? Well, if you've ever looked at the Civic Type R engine bay, it's kind of poorly designed. They put the intake pipe right on top of the turbo housing. Pretend my fist is a turbo and it's sitting right on top. And as we all know, heat rises. Well, the problem with that is that increases our intake air temps. When cool air is coming through from the airbox and flowing through here, the materials around it determine how hot or how cold those temperatures are gonna be. And it's not really a problem at first, but once your car gets heat soaked, that's when it becomes a problem. One of the goals of this inlet pipe is lower IAT temps. As an example, I believe the OEM pipe is made out of cast aluminum, and it's just all it's all solid one piece. If you ever look up thermal conductivity, it's measured in watts per meter Kelvin. Cast aluminum has a thermal conductivity of 167 watts per meter Kelvin. Well, what does that mean? That's just a number that says that's how much it will absorb heat and transfer it, to the other side. So they've made their pipe out of titanium. Titanium has a thermal conductivity of 17 watts per meter Kelvin. Cast aluminum, 167, titanium, 17. It literally has 9.8 times less thermal conductivity. So that's always a good thing. Now, one thing you will notice that's different about the PRL design as opposed to other inlet pipes that are out, I believe there's only one or two other ones. I think there's a carbon fiber one that's out from Venturi, which, that's gonna be crazy expensive because their intake costs $1,500. But there's a carbon fiber one from them. And then I believe Rampage Motorsports has a titanium one as well, but theirs is a one-piece design, whereas this one's a two-piece design. And you might be wondering, well, why is this one two pieces? Well, essentially, this piece right here, as you're gonna see when we go outside and hook this up to the car, this is gonna connect right to our turbo, okay? That turbo is gonna generate a lot of heat, and some of that heat's gonna travel up this pipe right here. Well, with a two-piece design, it's all gonna be fit on here with a coupler. If you notice on the inside of here, the way this is designed, the two metal pieces will actually not be touching. There's a piece of rubber that will block that. And so the theory is, and if I'm mistaken, guys, you guys can correct me in the comments. You're not gonna hurt my feelings. But I believe the theory is, because this elbow pipe here is made out of cast aluminum, similar to the OEM pipe. So I think the theory is, well, there's no way to stop this from getting heat, right? Like, it's gonna get heat because it's attached to the turbocharger. So with the two-piece design, the heat can only radiate up to a certain point. Well, the main portion that's really compromised by the turbo the most is up here. So the theory is cooler air comes in here, the air stays cool, and it will just push all of that hot air out of the way as it runs through. Whereas if it was a one-piece design, even if it's all made out of titanium, I do believe that it would kind of transfer further and further up, the more and more that the car gets heat soaked. Like I said, if I'm wrong about that, you guys let me know down in the comments section, but I believe that's what it's for. The next reason that they created it is it gets 50% more airflow. On the OEM pipe, the inlet's over here, the outlet's over here. On the OEM pipe, this is 62 millimeters in size, and this one is 59 millimeters in size. Whereas with this one, if we pull out our handy dandy calipers here, this one is 78 millimeters in size. It's literally 16 millimeters larger than stock on the inlet. And then on the outlet here, a little over 64 millimeters, what I'm getting, they measure it at 64 exactly. Whereas on the OEM pipe, the outlet is 59 millimeters. So we're about 16 millimeters larger than stock on the inlet, and we are about 5 millimeters larger than stock on the part that bolts to the turbo. So you get more air, but not only are you getting more air, it's also cooler air. So that's why I believe they kind of did this. Now in the box, like I said, you're gonna get the elbow pipe, you're gonna get the coupler, this pipe, you're gonna get the intake pipe right here, and then you're gonna get a bunch of hose clamps. Now that you kind of understand why this pipe exists, I say we go outside and install it, and I'll show you exactly what you need to do. It's not too bad. I got the fan on, and if that interferes with the audio on this, I'm just gonna have to cut the audio out and then do a voiceover later, but it's 113 degrees outside today. Thankfully, it's not 113 in the garage, but otherwise I wouldn't be out here. But just wanted to give you a forewarning. Another thing I wanted to mention that I forgot to mention when we were up close looking at the parts is, PRL says that they recommend that you get a tune when you put this pipe on. However, I've already been tuned. If you didn't see that video, I'll throw a link in the description so you can watch it. So I called my tuner and asked him, hey, will I need to do a retune with this pipe? And he said, no, you don't need to. He's like, you can if you want, but it isn't gonna hurt anything. And the only reason that I bring that up is, I got more stuff planned for this car. We're gonna try flex fuel. We're gonna try methanol kits. We're also gonna get the Hondata upgrade, fuel system upgrade. I'm probably gonna get the PRL turbo upgrade. And so I'm gonna be doing a lot of retunes in the future. So I just wanted to see if I needed to with this one, and he said that I didn't need to, but that's because I'm already tuned. So anyways, get back to this. First thing we need to do is we're gonna take this guy off right here. And all you're gonna need is a flathead screwdriver to take that off. So this right here is the evap flange that I was talking about. If you get this to use with a stock airbox, your pipe will include this. However, if you have the PRL intake already like I do, then you'll just transfer this piece to the new pipe. There we go. Just twist it off like this. Cool. Now that that part's off, we can move on to the standard pipe. All right, so then we are gonna take out these two 10mm bolts. And then I believe back here on the bottom side, I don't know if you can see it. I'm sorry, my car is kind of in a place where I can't really put my camera straight over it. But right here and right here, I believe those are 12mm, but I'll let you know as we get close to those. And then right here is another 12mm. And then I believe these are 10s on the front. Yeah, so we got two 10mm here and two 10mm here. Then we'll get to the other stuff. Something that I should mention, if you don't have access to a lift, try your hardest not to drop any bolts in this engine bay. Otherwise, you're gonna have to get underneath the car and drop the pan because the bottom of the chassis is sealed. So I've done that before, and hopefully, knock on wood, we're able to avoid that today. Just kind of a FYI on that. Oh, forgive me for earlier. You don't have to take out these two back here. You just have to take out this one 10mm that's right here. I forgot about that. Sorry about that, guys. But anyways, yeah, you just need a little extension and a 10mm, and you're gonna get that one off. All right. It also has a washer on it, so make sure that washer comes with it. It shouldn't come off, but just in case. All right, guys, so now we're on the other side. This is gonna be the passenger side of the engine bay. Right here, this is the inlet pipe, right here. And then over here, right here is a 10mm bolt. And then down here, I'm kind of touching it right now with my finger. It's all attached to this wiring harness. There's two more 10mm bolts that we need to remove. What gets weird here is you have your air conditioning hoses here, which makes a lot of this kind of difficult. That's gonna be probably the most difficult part is working around these hoses. Let's get those undone. Okay. So there's one bolt. Now we have to kind of wedge our wrench down here and get that one. And that one gets kind of hard because you can see I'm kind of hitting this black hose here, but it's totally doable. You might need to use a short extension on it. Yeah, if you use like a little bit of an extension, I only got like a 2-inch or maybe a 3-inch extension, you can kind of work around it a lot easier. Then once it's broken loose, is I pull the socket wrench off and I'll leave the extension down there and I turn it by hand. And that makes it a little bit easier for getting that nut out, because you're gonna need two hands so you don't accidentally drop it. I kind of had to block the camera, but there's the second one. Also, right here on your wastegate, there is a connector. You can see where those wires are that my finger's pointing to. We're gonna need to disconnect that. The best way to do that, I've found, is to go underneath here with your hand, kind of pushing it with your index finger, and just kind of disconnecting it like so. So I know it's gonna be really hard to see, but on each side of this pipe, there is a 12mm bolt. So the best way I've found to do it is I take my I think this is a 2, maybe a 3-inch extension, and then I'm also using my 2 or 3-inch socket, 12mm, and I reach down there like this and I get it connected. Because if you have a longer extension, it's gonna shoot you out over here, and these hoses for your AC are gonna get in the way. Once I get that broke, I'll just reach in there with just the extension here and I'll just turn it by hand. It's just easier that way. Something to kind of keep in mind so you don't drop these bolts is as you're kind of pulling these out, I like to take one finger like that on the bolt and then pull it. That way it doesn't fall out, unless you have magnetic sockets, and then you're golden. The other one that we got to get to is kind of underneath this wastegate, and it's way back there. It's probably the hardest one to get to, but you'll see it, it's really shiny. One thing that might help is to kind of undo this hose off of here. You really do got to reach down in there. I mean, it's way down. So basically, if you're looking at this, it's a little bit further. It's about right here and straight down. you'll see it. It's tucked kind of underneath everything. All right, so that one, I found it easier to get to using the shorter 3-inch extension instead of the long one. And I stuck it in without having it attached to the wrench. Now I'm going to take the wrench down in here and attach it. Now that that bolt's broke, I'm going to pull the wrench out and I'm going to turn it by hand. Sorry, I had to block the camera because you have to pull that out with 2 hands so you don't drop it. All right, and I believe after that, this guy is ready to come out. Kind of like that. And there it is. Now, before we install the other one, we got to install this heat blanket that I was talking about. Well, it's a cool idea, but unfortunately this blanket isn't going to work. I got everything back together, and the problem I'm having is the O2 sensor won't go far enough through it so I can actually thread it in. So I'm gonna have to email PTP. I mean, I believe this was a prototype model, so can't do that today. Oh well, I was hoping to get it done, but let's get back to the inlet pipe. All right guys, so now to get this, to get the elbow piece for the PRL inlet pipe on, we're gonna reuse our studs, our bolts that we took out over here. Also, if you pay attention, there's also gonna be a gasket that was on your car already. You're gonna reuse that gasket, so just a heads up on that. The gasket should stay attached to turbo, but if it happens to fall off, just kind of place it back on there. So we're gonna place this in just like this. Get it nice and flat, you know, against the turbo here. And then carefully, you know, guide in one of your screws here, one of your bolts, you know, to get this thing installed. For the bolt that's closest to the engine block for this elbow pipe, I found it easier to like start it by hand with the 12mm and the 2 or 3 inch extension. Now that I got it started, I'm gonna go in with this guy right here so I can kind of tighten it down a little bit more, but I don't want to tighten it down all the way until I get the other one started as well. All right, so I will say this, I have installed and uninstalled my inlet pipe before. It's a lot easier with the elbow here without the top piece on here, because you can actually see the bolts. You know, when it's one piece, you can't see the bolt and you're kind of just going blind. So now we're gonna put these little screws back on. These were the guys that held the wiring harness onto the pipe itself. So basically I'm just getting it started with by hand right here, and then I'll tighten it all down once I got all the bolts kind of started. So it's time to do this, this bear of one that's on this side. This is literally the hardest one to get to. Wish me luck. I'm gonna try it in this configuration first, and then I'll see if I need to change it. All right, I finally got it started. That is a rough spot to get. That wastegate just really gets in the way. It's super annoying, but it's totally doable. The scariest part is just dropping the bolt. They didn't give any torque specs in their directions, so I just kind of got them really tight and then just took them a quarter turn past that and just called that good. All right, so now we're gonna take this coupler right here. We're gonna take this skinnier side, we're gonna put it onto the elbow. First, we're gonna put this hose clamp on it. Now we can just slide this on just like so. All right, so what we're gonna do is make sure that's completely seated, and then I'm gonna start tightening down this hose clamp. All right, we got one other thing we gotta do down here. I almost forgot. So first of all, we need to reattach this whole sensors onto the pipe. Almost forgot that, glad I caught it. And before I forget, we need to reconnect our wastegate down here on this plug that we took off earlier. So let's put all our O-rings and everything onto the new intake pipe. But let's not tighten this down all the way quite yet. Just kind of keep it loose, because we're gonna take our new PRL intake pipe. You're gonna put the appropriate O-rings on you. Hopefully you make all of the little flathead nuts face outward, otherwise it's gonna kind of be tough. So let's attach it to the air box first. Okay, and now when it's attached to the air box, and we have this tube here, when we push down, it should just fall into place. All right, and then it will just seat down into place, kind of like you just saw right there. Now we can get all of our thingamajigger's aligned right up here. We're gonna put our evap back in there, like so. Now we're gonna start reinstalling these little bolts. We're gonna start with this back one, way back here. It was that one of those, that longest bolt that we took out over here. All right, so now we can go through, tighten up all the flat heads, make everything snug, and we should be ready to start this pig up. All right, I got it installed. Let's start her up and take her for a drive, see how she sounds. All right, so for the inlet pipe, guys, currently it's 101 degrees outside. I'm running at 113 degrees on my intake temps. So we're running approximately 12 to 13 degrees over ambient. One thing that I do notice is a way quicker response and a way faster spool time. Yeah, I can't go that fast out here, unfortunately. But I don't notice any delay in the spool. Now this car doesn't have a lot of turbo lag anyway, but now whatever turbo lag it did have seems to be completely gone. Now I haven't retuned the car since I got this inlet pipe on, but I can say, holy cow, this thing moves. Still feel like it needs to rev out higher. That's just how I feel. I'm so used to the 8th gen Civics revving out to 8,000 RPMs that the red line sneaks up on me with this car. I will say that. So I do find myself a lot, especially passing people like I did back there, where I'm like, oh crap, I'm already hitting red line, and I didn't even realize it. Thankfully, I got that Hondata dash system, and it turns bright yellow the moment that I hit red line, so that usually reminds me to shift. But I did drive the 8th gen Civic for like 10 years before I got this. Slow down, I'm going way too fast. Just a couple miles over the speed limit, that's all. Nothing to be alarmed about. It's crazy the responsiveness and how much power that these mods, that this inlet pipe actually adds, you know, smoothing out the airflow, increasing the restrictive pipe that was there before. I didn't think it was going to make much of a difference, but it actually does. I can definitely feel it. You know, even versus having the tune before with the standard inlet pipe, this really opens it up, and I just could not believe how much difference that it actually made. Right now, you know, we've got that boost up pretty high through that canyon back there. We're running 132 degrees for our intake temps. It's currently 100 degrees for the ambient temps. Let's see how long it takes us to, you know, get back down to about 15 degrees over ambient. I'm doing about 66 miles an hour. Something that I've noticed really helps lowering your temps is to switch back to comfort mode. And when you're back in comfort mode, you know, it makes your pedal sensitivity less, so you're less likely to engage boost. So let's see. So I've been running the PRL inlet pipe now for a little over a month. When I installed it, I'm in Phoenix, so the temperatures are crazy hot right now. I've been running it for a little over a month. So let's talk about what I think about it, if I think it was worth the money, and any of the differences that I've noticed with the PRL inlet pipe versus the stock inlet pipe. Number one, I want to talk about the install. Yes, we went through the install. The hardest part of the install is getting the factory pipe off, especially with those bolts that are tucked way into the engine and right up against that turbo. Those are the hardest bolts to get. I do feel, however, I actually really love the two-piece design over a one-piece design. I know there's other titanium inlet pipes that are out there, and I'm not trying to knock them, but I love the two-piece design for a couple of different reasons. Number one, it makes installs so much easier because all you got to do is install this little elbow pipe, and because there's not a pipe running over your engine, you have so much more space to get the bolts in for the new pipe. Then you put the elbow piece on, then you attach the titanium piece. And the second reason I like that is in the future, I do plan on doing a turbo upgrade on the car. So now, all I have to do if I want to take the turbo off is take the titanium inlet portion off. I can leave the elbow attached while it's on the car, and I can actually access the bolts to the turbo, take those off, and then I can take the elbow off once I have the turbo out of the car. So it really makes, accessing your heat shield, all that stuff is so much easier with the two-piece design because all you got to do is unscrew some hose clamps and it's done. That part, I think, is just a game changer, having that two-piece design. In regards to my initial impressions, I have not had a chance to dyno my car. I've been wanting to, just haven't had access to a dyno. Our schedules keep conflicting. In my first drive in the car, I noticed a couple of different things that were drastically different than the stock pipe. Number one, way faster spooling. It was definitely more responsive. I really felt like the mid-range power really shines in this car when you have this pipe on there. Now, obviously I don't have any numbers to prove that. That's just the butt dyno. On a takeoff, I felt like it spooled faster, but then just mid-range power felt way better. I don't know if that's a placebo effect, but I still, to this day, after 6 or 8 weeks of driving it, I still feel the power on it. You know how you get used to power as you do upgrades? On this one, I still feel it, which is kind of strange. Another thing I noticed was it had a different sound for the intake. I mean, you still get your whooshing sound that comes in, but I felt like there was this metallic sound, and maybe that's the titanium. I'm not 100% sure, but it sounds pretty cool. Now, one thing that I expected to be different that wasn't different was my IATs. As I mentioned earlier, titanium doesn't absorb heat as easily as, cast aluminum. And I expected my IATs to be a lot lower, but in fact, I found that the IATs were pretty much exactly the same as stock. And then I felt like when driving around, coming from a stop at a red light, your IATs go up, and then when you take off, they come back down. Strangely, I felt like the stock pipe, the IATs come back down quicker, which kind of threw me off. Maybe that's just like because it was 110 degrees outside, I don't know. Whenever I'm cruising from 30 to, I say, about 50 miles an hour, on stock, I was getting about 15 to 20 degrees over ambient. And then when cruising at about 65 miles an hour or higher, I was getting about 10 to 15 degrees over ambient. And that kind of got me like, I wonder what I could do to make this better. So I'd seen this on Instagram and I figured I'd give it a try. I went out and bought some of this heat reflective tape. I will throw a link in the description so you can pick some of this up. So what I did was I wrapped the titanium portion of the inlet pipe, and then I wrapped the coolant lines that are around that inlet pipe. And then I took it for a test drive. And I gotta say, wow, lowest IATs I've ever seen in my life. Prior to the tape, my IATs were the same as it was on stock, 15 to 20 degrees when I was below 50 miles an hour, and then 10 to 15 degrees beyond 65 miles an hour. When I installed this, straight up at 65 miles an hour and above, I am at 8 degrees over ambient, which is absolutely the lowest I've ever seen it. And when I'm 50 miles an hour and below, I'm seeing a max of 15 degrees over ambient. So it definitely gave it a good 5 or 6 degree drop in temperature on all areas. So I thought that was awesome. The second benefit that I've seen using this heat reflective tape in combination with the titanium inlet pipe is it comes down so much quicker. So if I'm stuck at a long red light, your IATs, you're just sitting there idling boiling. They can go up to like 150, 160, degrees Fahrenheit. I noticed the moment I take off, I'm not even a quarter mile down the road and it's already down like 20 degrees over ambient. And then it keeps going down 15 degrees over ambient. And then once I'm at cruising speeds, it's literally 8 degrees over ambient. And I was like, are you freaking kidding me? So then I took it a step further and I went out and I purchased the 2020 Civic Type R grill. I mentioned this in a previous video. I didn't do an install video on it or anything like that. I will say this, all you need is the grill and an emblem. And I will throw links to exactly the grill and the emblem you need. You don't need the new winglets. You can still use your OEM winglets and fit the 2020 grill on there. I have a video on removing the bumper when I made the headlight video, so I will link to that, but you essentially just remove the bumper, remove the grill, put the grill on, put the bumper back on. That's basically it. I saw a crazy improvement over stock. I know a lot of people like to buy the aftermarket grills that are way open, but I wanted something that still had the Type R logo because I wanted everything to look as stock as possible. Now with this one, I didn't really notice lower IATs. I just noticed the temperatures came back down so much faster. So I did all this in stages so I could kind of note, what happened. So prior to the grill, I had the inlet pipe with the tape on it. I noticed after about a quarter mile, after I took off from a red light, I would get to about 20 degrees over ambient. With the new grill, I could get down to about 13 degrees over ambient in that same distance. But at 100% brings those temps down way faster. So if you're wondering about the grill thing, I will throw a link to the OEM grill. If you don't want to buy that, I'll throw a link to the aftermarket grill. Both of them do their job. After I did all that, the car has literally become like this whole other animal. I mean, the heat reflective tape is so effective. I'm actually thinking about lining the underside of my hood where the turbo is. I'm thinking about doing my airbox with this. I don't know how far I'm gonna take it, but there is definitely some magic in this stuff. I love it to death. So usually in every video, I like to answer the question, knowing what I know now, would I still buy it? Yes, I think the PRL inlet pipe has a lot of things going for it that the other inlet pipes don't. Number one, it's pretty much the most affordable one. I think they're about $500. I'll throw a link below so you can check the price. Whereas the other ones are about like $1,000. I think Venturi just came out with one, but you might have to use the Venturi intake, which that intake's like 1,500 bucks. It's crazy. I think that one's about $800 or $900, but it's carbon fiber. Then I think Rampage has one. Rampage one is a complete pipe, one piece. It's all titanium. And that one's about $1,000. So this one for $500, you still get titanium. That's a huge bargain. Now the elbow pipe, yeah, that's cast, but the cool thing about it is it's not sitting over the turbo where all the heat is going. So it doesn't really need to be titanium. The two-piece design, like I mentioned earlier, I think that's a game changer because I will be doing the turbo upgrade later. So I like just being able to take the pipe off and I can get to my heat shield. I can get to everything down there. I think the biggest disappointment though was the elbow pipe. So on the elbow pipe, like I showed you earlier, it had a place for your O2 sensor on the top. I was not able to fit my O2 sensor through the hole far enough so I could screw the O2 sensor back. I thought that was kind of crazy. I was like, wait a second, what is going on here? I don't know what it is. I've seen people on Instagram that have the elbow pipe installed, but I literally sat there for about an hour just trying to get the sensor through the hole. So I'm gonna have to send an email to PTP, see what's going on with that because I couldn't get it to fit and I was pretty disappointed about it. Speaking of blankets, I have an extra PTP Turbo Blanket. It's actually the United Speed Racing one, but they're all made by PTP. Doesn't really matter. I actually bought this one to do a giveaway on. This one is, the only thing I don't have is the wire, but you can pick up the wire. All you gotta do to enter this giveaway is be a subscriber. Leave me a comment down below, anything that you want, and here in about a month or so, I'll choose a winner and I'll mail this to you. I guess the best way to do it would be, leave a comment with your email address and then I'll send you an email if you get chosen. So what I'll do is from all the comments that have email addresses, I'll put them in a randomizer and then I'll select one and then I'll email you, get your shipping info, send this to you. You can do whatever you want with it. You can even sell it if you want to. I don't really care. I just want to say thank you to all you guys for, being subscribers and helping this channel grow. That's always nice. I'm very grateful for that. I do have some pretty big plans in the future, like new GTR build, maybe. You have to stick around for that. But going back to the PRL inlet, I think it's 100% worth it. I would buy it again 5 or 6 times knowing what I know now. I'll throw a link below, but the most important thing is, what do you guys think about it? Do you think it was worth the $499 that it cost to do this upgrade? But until next time, guys, I love you. You guys stay sexy.